Welcome to TechCrunch Robotics session with HAX founders, where we're talking to founders from across stages, across geographies, and ultimately all finding success building robotic startups in a lot of different ways. So we've brought together a wide range of folks and happy to give a quick introduction. Before we go into that, I'll tell you a little bit about myself and who I am in running this panel. So my name is Garrett Winther. I'm a partner at HAX and SOSV. SOSV is a global venture capital firm focused on early stage deep tech, where we love to write very first checks into very difficult and hard to do startups. So, for example, we invest in a lot of robotic startups. And within SOSV, we have a program called HAX, where all of the founders you're about to meet came through and worked with us at HAX, where we do deep dive intensive engineering, design, business development. We bring them into facilities like the one I'm sitting in here in Newark, and ultimately help them go from very first check, very first idea, first prototype to the next stage of production to first customers, and ultimately getting to the next major round of investment where we continue to invest and grow and scale. So we're lucky enough to work with and work alongside all of the amazing founders on this call, some that are more recent HAX companies have just raised their Series A, and some that have gone on to become unicorns and continuing to scale. So with that, I'll hand it off and go around the room and have everybody give a very quick introduction of who you are and what your company does, and a bit about what the stage of your company is doing right now. So actually, let's start with Kate and Neptune, currently out in Asia.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kate. I'm the co-founder and COO of Neptune Robotics. So we are a Series A company. At Neptune, what we do is build robots to decarbonize the marine industry and reduce fuel consumption for the industry. So we provide robotic hull cleaning services and digital solutions to ship owners and charterers with the widest port coverage in China now. Thank you.
And tell us a bit more about your stage. So kind of tell me more about, you guys just raised some money, how many robots are out in the world?
So we just closed our Series A, and it's led by Secrea and followed by Matrix and SOSV. So and currently we are building more robots and we are expanding to more ports in China and also globally.
Fantastic, thank you. So maybe we'll keep going around the world. So off to Pramod in India.
Yeah. Thanks, Garrett. Hi, this is Pramod. I'm co-founder and CEO of Unbox Robotics. We started the company in 2019 to build plug-and-play robotic systems for fulfillment centers or logistics centers for retailers and logistics enterprises. We started doing commercial deployments late last year. We are now entering the third facility. Like, we are going live with the third facility with one of the India's largest e-commerce players. And we are also planning to deploy our robots in Europe. We are targeting before Black Friday this year to sort some of the fashion garments with one of the biggest fashion retailers.
Fantastic, thank you. Let's keep moving around. Faizan, you mind going next?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Faizan. I'm co-founder and CEO of Avid Bots. At Avid Bots, we're making autonomous cleaning robots for commercial and industrial real estate. We are a growth stage company based in Canada, and in terms of scale and deployment, we're approaching 1,000 robots deployed very, very soon.
Awesome, thank you. And then coming close to home here in Jersey and New York City, Chu, do you mind telling us about Opentrons?
Sure. My name is Chu Chao. I was a co-founder, ex-CEO, ex-CTO of Opentron. I have departed the company, become more investor now and other things. The company finished a Series C last year, and we probably by now we cover 1,000 robots worldwide. We're doing robotic for biologies and chemistry, and those are the area that we are expert in.
Fantastic. So actually, maybe start with you, Chu, and kind of you guys were Opentrons is a very interesting position a couple years ago when COVID broke out, and you had a perfect product to address a very pressing need. Can you tell us a bit about your journey, kind of from April 2020 up until now?
Yeah, sure. I think when the world was on fire during COVID, everybody's just learned the lesson differently. And I always be proud of ourselves being the very unique position being open source. And that's the time the whole business model changed. No one can go installation. The open source really works out. The rest of the world, everybody, all the postdoc, all the students can now learn how to code, how to install the whole thing. And Opentrons is a little different than most of the company around. We are vertically integrated, meaning we have the whole supply chain under our wing. We go to a machine shop, we open the mold, we have the whole manufacturing under our own factory in Shenzhen, and the sales and the engineering team are all in New York here. So I think we were able to solve the problem differently. The old-fashioned just-in-time just doesn't work. So I think that's the time that we learned a good lesson that vertical integration actually works in a different time. And having said that, I think the key is really you have the right product at the right time.
I think another company that had a similar moment, especially around disinfection, was Avid Bots. So Faizan, maybe tell us about like how the impact has impacted you, or kind of how you've taken the last 2 years in your robotics company.
Yeah, sure. So when the pandemic hit, I mean, we were growing before that. What happened is when the pandemic hit, cleaning got the spotlight in the executive room and the boardrooms all over the world, and the level of conversation around cleaning just elevated at all our target customers to the very top, and that helped us grow faster. The pandemic is in a lot of countries now, at least in terms of the conversation behind us. But that trend is still continuing, where people now recognize the value and importance of cleaning and getting it done through autonomous systems.
So I'll switch gears from cleaning floors to cleaning ship hulls. And I know we've got especially a company that's deeply intertwined with the supply chain in Neptune Robotics. But tell us a little bit about how you've been able to scale from, I mean, maybe what seems as a very simple robot, but actually very complex. So kind of maybe tell us about your first journeys of getting a robot onto a ship hull.
Well, you would think it's quite easy to clean the ship, and I thought so in the beginning before I go into a container port where you see a ship lying down in front of you. It's like a 150-story building lying down in front of you, and there are over 30 of them at the port, and our robot has to climb around it, which is underwater. So it's actually quite challenging work environment. And our ideas start from solving one problem for one customer in the industry. And luckily, that customer is a key player. So he helped us to give us a lot of advice to start with. So we do one thing right. And once we satisfy this first customer, and we are able to provide solutions to the market. And for us at Neptune, we defined the mission quite early on, which is to decarbonize the shipping industry with green technology and robots. So if you work on the right direction, you will find your customers, and then the government and the regulators actually all work towards the same goal. And that's where we what help us to reach where we are now.
Maybe with that, tell us a bit more about the impact you can make in terms of some of the numbers, in terms of global emissions saved or gasoline saved with shipping.
Yeah, sure. Because as you all know, greenhouse gas emission has become a central topic in the shipping industry, which with the introduction of carbon intensity indicator from 2023. So all vessels now, they are graded by their emissions. And with a global coverage, Neptune will be able to we're looking to reduce 10 to 20% of emissions in the shipping industry, which is around 200 million tons of CO2 per year. And that is equivalent to around 42 million cars permission per annum. And we want to eliminate it with our robots for the shipping industry.
And you can do that just by scraping the side of ships.
Yes. And with the, we're also doing the digitalization and helps them to do route planning and how to, we provide Neptune annual care, and it's actually an annual package to help them to save fuel and to reduce emission.
Awesome, thank you. So maybe continue on the supply chain, but promote in India. Tell us a bit about building a robotics company in India, especially one where the industry is booming. It seems like there's massive capabilities growing there. But tell me a bit more around your experience kind of building a robotics company in India.
Yeah, so actually, this is a global phenomenon, and which is also seen in India, which is e-commerce has seen tremendous growth post the pandemic because a lot of people are shopping online. That has put pressure on the supply chains in terms of the throughput or the speed at which they need to process these parcels, and the limited real estate they have in cities. Especially, they have limited real estate or area available to process these many shipments. So that's the area we are tackling. What we are building is the swarm robotic systems, which can be deployed in almost half or one third of the space compared to other sorting systems or distribution systems. And these are plug and play systems which can be deployed, let's say, in a couple of weeks, versus the traditional ones which typically take few months of several months of time. So we have basically converted a kind of a rigid system into a flexible and compact system that allows the e-commerce and retail companies to be agile and do automation whenever they want, and kind of get ready for the peak seasons like Diwali. And in India, we have huge peak season in Diwali where the volumes go up at almost 3 to 5 times or even more. So that's the kind of range we are looking at. Same is the case with the Western countries, where we see the huge peak in, let's say, Christmas, during the Christmas time, or the Black Friday, so kind of those kind of days. So what we have done is we have established a system which is a plug and play. If people want to do automation, they will be able to do it very quickly and in a very limited space, and that allows us to give value add to the customers in India, which are always facing real estate issues, especially in the urban clusters like Mumbai, Pune, Bangalore. And at the same time, we are also looking at the Western market, not just in India, but yeah, this is a problem which we saw in India, and we have seen people showing the same problem even in the Western countries.
Yeah, I saw you were just on a trip throughout Europe,
Yeah,
showing off and
yeah,
working with all sorts of customers. Tell me about the transition from India
yeah.
into Europe and the US.
Yeah, so we did close to, let's say, a couple of deployment, like a couple of facilities we automated in India. Now we are automating the third facility for e-commerce player in India. At the same time, we are getting a lot of inbound interest from US and Europe, especially from e-commerce and retail logistics companies. So we have done some visits to their warehouses. We have had discussions with them. Currently, we are planning to enter the Europe through one of the biggest companies in retail segment, by deploying our robots in their facility in Europe. And at the same time, we are also planning to deploy in the US with one of the e-commerce players there. So I think this will be public in the coming few, let's say, few months. The names are not yet public, but the plan is to deploy this by end of this year in those markets as we scale in
Fantastic.
India. Like, yeah,
Yeah, that's great. So, thank you for some quick. I don't know. This is real stuff. Especially the last couple of years with COVID, robots are inherently hard, especially when supply chains are a mess or we're figuring out these larger scale problems. But they're also just inherently hard, even if we didn't have all the changes and unique things the last couple of years. So maybe we'll start out with just a very broad question. So you all started with us back in your pre-seed days when you had your first prototypes. You maybe had just a couple people on your team. You still had years of learning, hundreds of millions of dollars to raise, but you're in that moment where you're just stepping out and starting your company for the first time. I'm curious if you were to go back and give yourself a piece of advice from where you are now to where you started. What would be that learning or that piece of advice? And I'm open to anybody that wants to start off the conversation, and we'll move around the room.
Okay, I can go. I think if I wish I knew it is okay and a must to switch focus along the way. So at pre-seed, you would focus on features, on proof of concept, and the product has to be tested and wanted by the market. Whereas at a later stage, and where we need to focus on work on stability and industrialization, and that require a tremendous amount of work in details and a totally different set of skills. And that's what I wish I would tell myself early
Yeah,
on.
so more prototyping and solving needs than maybe focused on industrialization right up front. So kind of make sure you're solving your customers' needs. And I'm sure the rest of you have at least that learning or more about what's. They say Faizan, you're unmuted, so you're ready to go.
Yeah, no, actually, when you said we started with the first prototype, I was thinking about our journey. We actually started with HAX without a prototype. And I remember the first time we were at this that's back when Cyril at SOSV was running HAX, and we were at this intro session, and I actually remember raising my hand and saying, "Hi, my name is Faizan. It's Pablo. We are here. We don't have a mechanical engineer on team. Can you help us hire one or something like that?" And I think I remember, I don't know who it was, but they're like, "So you guys don't know how to do hardware, so why are you here?" So anyway, yeah, I think I, advice. I would agree with what Kate said. We had some of that. I think another advice from my side would be to focus on who your ideal customer profile is, and always be willing to challenge those assumptions on who would buy your robots, um, and who would buy your robots like right now, and maybe the people buying your robots early on are not the ones who help you become big. Um, Yeah, so the very first customers who are testing your robots may not be the ones that help you get to scale. The ones who help you get to scale are perhaps a very different type of customer and have a very different type of feature requirements and robustness requirements. So be mindful of that, and develop the product with that in mind.
Well, maybe go over to Chu next. I know it's been a few years since you're in that first moment, but I'm curious, kind of giving yourself or Opentrons feedback or advice from a few years ago.
I think I think being a hardware company, is different path and journey than other startup. The pressure is different, and I think unfortunately the world of investing in hardware still didn't really change much the last couple of years, unfortunately. So I think if I were to do it again, is that the question? If I would have done it again?
Yeah, sorry, I missed that. Would you do it again? Would you do it the same way, or would you
Yeah,
do
no,
something
no. What you
different?
saying? Well, no. I would. I'm always hardware guy, right? Just I would say, one need to spend more time to understand, who are your actual investors, and because in the end, there are only very few people in this world invest in hardware, and I hate to say, most of them are noise. And as I said in one of the interview, I walked 150 VC in New York, all the way to Boston. You know, and I know who is real. Very very few. You can count it less than one hand. If there's less, it's more than that. But I think, I think as a founder, if I'd have done it again, I would tell people, don't waste time. There's only very few people, and talk to those few people. Yeah.
I agree with that. I think we've seen countless founders spend too much time and spin their wheels on folks that aren't necessarily a good fit for them. So maybe last on this one, Pramod, you guys, I mean, it's only been a couple years. You guys have scaled
Yeah.
really quickly. I remember working with you in Shenzhen on your first robot. But tell me what advice. Actually, tell me what advice I should have given you. What did I not say to you that I should have said a few years ago?
Okay, so we actually we also started without a prototype. We just had a concept on paper, and we were selling that concept to the customers. Uh, I think you gave the right advice at the right time. At that time, like, we didn't have anything, so you guys helped us with the prototype. But
Thank you.
overall, I think
Appreciate it.
overall, I think we were fortunate to have very patient customers who have been waiting for our robots from last 3 years. Uh, we sold the concept to them in 2019, and we eventually are deploying in 2021, 22. Uh, the good thing happened to us was the customers got involved from day one. Right from our first prototype, they got excited and they got interested in what we're doing. So we continuously got the feedback from them in terms of what they want on ground. I think the focus should be on solving the actual problem, and of course some features can come late. I think Kate mentioned that. uh, how do you industrialize the product? How do you make sure that the system is stable on ground by doing rigorous testing, and that too with the customer's involvement? I think that is very important, rather than building the product in silos and then suddenly launching it. Especially the kind of products we are building for the bigger enterprises or even smaller enterprises, because this directly affects their businesses.
It's interesting. So everybody's answers were non-technical. Was learn about your deal with your customers, build the right features, know your investors, bring in your customers early. It's all things. I mean, I think most people in this session are likely engineers or kind of thinking around mechanical, electrical problems. But everybody here kind of goes back and wants to give advice around customers. So that's, I mean, a fascinating insight to make sure that everybody that's just starting out makes sure to double down and not overly focus on engineering the product, but going out and making sure engaging with the customer the right way. So with that, I actually do want to actually flip that into, from a technical standpoint, like hardware is a bit harder, right? You're dealing with multiple source parts. You're writing embedded code, cloud code. You're building mechanical mechanisms. You're shipping things out to the world where they might break. I'm curious to go back and give maybe more hardware or technical advice to your former selves. Kind of what turned out to be bigger problems than you were expecting. Um, and I can pick on folks. I know Faizan, you guys have built up your own facility. You guys have done assembly. You guys own a lot of your supply chain. I'm curious, kind of what you've learned as you've gone from that first prototype up to the scale that you're currently at.
I mean, the first few robots that Avid Bots built were artisan robots. They were hand built. I mean, in some ways they're still hand built, but I mean really mean artisan robots. Like each one was a unique masterpiece by someone on the production floor. Uh, that can't scale, right? That cannot scale at all, and also you cannot service artisan robots in the field. So what we learned really quickly was how to make it extremely repeatable in terms of manufacturing as well as service. Um, that is a learning that we had, and we have had as we have gone from the very first prototypes to the scale we are at today.
And I guess I'm curious, how big are those problems for you? So in terms of like how much mind space or money or time is that industrialization process taking for you?
I have not quantified it in terms of money, but it did take some time. So maybe it took a good 18 months of all around company effort, engineering, manufacturing operations, just changing the way the culture of the company, right? From we do products and features really fast and ship fast to, we have to like test, we have to have alpha, beta, have strict exit criteria for every stage, and which customers do you release the new feature to, and before you release it to, now at our scale, you can't, whatever some engineer thinks up, we cannot just launch that feature onto 1,000 robots. That would not be a good idea. Yeah, 18 months to change the culture, and an all company effort.
And Chu, you guys have taken it from that first level of scale and now even higher. And you mentioned quickly in the intro around having an integrated supply chain, but I'm curious, any other major learnings around either technical integration, or I know you guys have a unique point of view around open source and kind of being able to bring those things together. kind of tell me around some of the technical hurdles that you overcame as you scaled up to where you are today.
I think as most of us are based in U.S., the trade war and all this other issue kicks in, and it's just some of those things I call is something just throw you off completely, right? So those are the things that you got to be, nimble. You got to understand how to navigate the whole political and all this other issue. And scaling is difficult, in the end, right? You thought you have a supply chain, and then you just keep constantly. So we have a very large size team in China dealing with supplier directly, and I'm pretty gung ho on vertical integrated. So they basically a lot of times spend weeks in the suppliers, certain key supplier, make sure you deliver. And unfortunately, when you're a small team, you just can't do it. I think those are lesson that we have to learn, and you keep constantly switch better and better supplier, and that's the only way you can get better. But in a small company, you just don't have the funding or the mean to do it, and this is really the hard part about scaling up. Yeah.
Okay, so I know going to you, I think scaling is uniquely difficult for Neptune, mostly because it has to live in salt water, has to go in big industrial ships, has to like you guys have to be pulling biomass and doing things in very extreme environments. Can you tell me more about the industrialization process, especially with your uniquely difficult environment?
Yes. So for us, actually, I do. I quite agree with Faizan that we also faced the similar stage that the previously we made each of the robot in house and by hand, and then we just go out and test the robot for 200 days. So our folks are on the sea for over 200 days every year, and they have like the brown color skin to tell that. And afterwards, at this stage, we realized that we need to make it more reliable and easier to maintain. So the robot we actually make it more modular and easy to assemble, easy to maintain, and easy to operate as well. So in this way, we can this actually support our expansion. Without that, we will just be a company that build handmade robots all the time. But for this, yeah. So I do
And
agree in
And you
terms of.
have well, we I remember when we were in Shenzhen, we built even a testing pool for you guys in the HAX office, and now you've built an even bigger one. So tell me more of like the internal testing environment, the validation that you guys do. Even I don't know, we'll find a picture of your amazing testing pool and ship hull in your office.
Yeah, so in HAX, HAX helped us build in the testing field. I think it's like a 3x2x2 meter swimming pool, and now we have like a 10-meter long and 3 meter in depth and 3 meter in width pool, and we do need that to mimic the shape of the ship, and also the how the robot's gonna perform underwater. So we fill that with water, and the robot will try to conquer the curvest point on the ship, which we mimic with a steel wall inside the pool. And that's quite necessary, especially at this stage. We need to test it thoroughly before deploy the robot. Otherwise, we will just find countless problems at the scene, which we do not want that.
Perfect. Yeah, I agree. I think just finding a way to find that testing environment, and they're going to promote. You have a very different setup where it's a little bit more controlled environment, but you're operating effectively hundreds of swarm robotics in and around each other. So there's inherent scale with every customer. But tell me the challenges of kind of scaling in kind of the environment you're in, a more swarm approach, and what's been difficult about that or interesting about that.
Yeah, so we do not sell single robots. So we sell, let's say it can be 20, 30, 50, 100 robots in one, let's say, purchase order or one contract. So it's a large system, or it's a, even if it is a small system, it might still have 5-10 bots in one setup. uh, so installing the system on ground, that is one of the key, let's say, criteria or key parameters for us to scale up and deploy as many orders as possible. So we have kept things very plug and play. All the systems, let's say key components in our system, robots, the shelves, these are like smart shelves, or the feeding systems where the scanning of the barcodes happen. We have kept the design very modular so that our teams can go on the ground and deploy this in a, let's say, a matter of few days. So this is basically kind of accelerate the whole deployment on ground for the customer. And it can also kind of help us in terms of scale and deploy several orders at the same time going forward. At the back end, we have the manufacturing or assembly work like the others. Of course, we started with the kind of a manual approach to assemble the bots, but we are now going forward and kind of revising our designs, or even we have come up with a new design where we'll be able to assemble the robots faster. And we are now kind of setting up the assembly lines in India as well, to manufacture at a different scale. Like this is something which we are doing for the further, like, future manufacturing plans.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So across the board, everybody's had essentially a culture shift from that first days of building quick prototypes, finding needs,
Yep.
into more process oriented scale, more modularity, more integration, and really thoughtful approach around testing environments and getting this to scale. So really designing that culture shift into your company. And I think the other thing that's transitioning or happening over that time is how you're interacting with investors. So Chu, you mentioned at the beginning, just finding the right investors. Not everybody does hardware. Finding the people that actually one will invest, but also add value. So I'm curious, whoever wants to start with this, but what's your engagement with investors been like? So early stage VCs, even later stage, kind of what's the overall response when you start talking about robotics oriented companies?
I think in general, I would say majority of the VC I've talked to, maybe 150 plus and beyond even, the understanding, the in-depth understanding robotic is actually very shallow. People have very little attention, and even they call doing due diligence and all this is more a MBA checking. They just typical the market size, the tech challenge, and all this, right? They don't really have an in-depth understanding of the market and the need. So as a founder, we had to do a lot of storytelling. And unfortunately, I find that most of the founders fail to do a storytelling. Either they're too technical or they're just not ready. And it's like, you want a good story, you need to tell the story, and you need to spend time on it. I think, after all these years, we can, me and Will, we can basically do the elevator pitch in 30 seconds and get the person excited. But of course, now with the COVID things, it's much easier. We don't even need to tell the story. So I think is I would say to a certain extent you can tell is the investor, but on the other hand, it's like you want to sell your product, you need to tell a good story to your customer. So I think unfortunately now I become more investor side. I can appreciate that from the investor side I can see so many founders fail to tell the story. In fact, they totally fail the storyline. So I think now I have the opportunity to get both sides, and I would say I would bring the founder more.
That's yeah, no, it's an essential part of any business, but even more so when you're overcoming uh, technical and scale challenges that you have with robotics. Maybe I'll flip over to Kate. I know you guys just finished up your Series A. You're working with some top tier investors like Sequoia and Matrix. I'm kind of curious your fundraising experience and any learnings from your most recent fundraising round.
Sure. I think when we are at our seed round, so early stage, as a robotic company, we were quite lucky to have a working prototype back then, and then we managed to get some pilots with the some key players in the market, and that's what helps us with our seed rounds, so earlier rounds. And I think for hardware company, it's more challenging because we need a prototype to demonstrate at that stage, and compared to a software company. But later on, the technical the technologies you build on actually becomes your competitiveness, your competitive edge to other companies. And for our Series A, so the recent round, I think it's firstly it's the vision, and they share that we're quite lucky to have them share the vision on the green technology to reduce the carbon emission for shipping industry. And also we need to have we have our early customers, our adopters that help us to that actually have paid for the service. So we need to prove that the paid orders that to support our business model. I think that's what helps us reach here.
Flip over to Faizan for Avid Bots. You guys have gone through several rounds of fundraising as well. Can maybe tell me about how fundraising was challenging or different at seed stage than it is kind of from your most recent round?
Yeah. I think when you're at the seed or pre-seed and seed, you're selling more the vision of where this is going to go. As you keep going through the stages, you start getting more proof points about that vision starting to become more real with product, with customers, with then eventually scaling customers. And as a growth stage company, vision is still very important, of course, but investors are looking a lot at growth metrics now. So that is what has changed. So your storytelling, we were just talking about that. Your storytelling narrative, I think, changes by stage, and the pitch that got you your seed round is not going to get you your Series C. So you have to constantly readapt your pitch and your story to be stage appropriate.
Pramod, if you want to finish this one off, and your experience fundraising is also very unique, kind of dealing with a wide range of angels and now institutional funds scaling up.
Yeah, so I think the one thing is common, which is a problem which we are selling. Like, we are talking about a huge problem across the globe. I think uh, that is something investors will look at, how big the problem is, whether there is a problem. Second thing is, how do you remain defensible? Uh, People have a perception that, of course, hardware can be copied. People are always looking at the moat. So there we have to kind of demonstrate the different proof points, that why our systems, that is hardware as well as software, why those are having an edge over the other systems, how this gets improved over the period of time as we deploy more and more, or as we sort more and more packages. I think that is something people, investors will look at. And at different stages, of course, people are looking at different, let's say, parameters. Let's say in the beginning, in the pre-seed round or seed round, they are always looking at whether do you have a product, do you have a working prototype, as I think Kate mentioned. Then the questions start to differ. Then they are looking at, okay, do you have happy customer? They want to talk to your customers and get their feedback. And I think at a later point, they will look at the numbers. Are you growing fast? Are you facing any scalability issues? Where are the bottlenecks? Because you're building hardware, how can you scale to 1,000 bots from few hundred bots? So I think that's where you need to start answering at different phases of the startup.
Fantastic. So you start getting funding, and it's now heading off to growing and scaling, and off to the next thing, the next big vision. And I think there's a lot of interesting developments in robotics every single month, every single year. I think we see companies all the time working on some pretty fantastic stuff. I'm curious, in your time as building a robotics company, What are the big changes you've seen, but also what are you most excited about the future? So whether it's the advent of more AI included into the embodied robotics, or new manufacturing processes, new components, new motors, new open source offerings. So I'm curious from your team, like for people on this call that should get excited about the future of robotics. Kind of what is the next wave that you see coming? So I know Chu, you probably I know you think about this a lot, and you're looking at a lot of companies as well. So I'm curious what you're seeing out there in the future.
I think most of the low-hanging fruit is already done. I think people need to think through a little bit more. Very very difficult part like surgical robotic and all this. Those are the ultra high end, ultra difficult. But I think there's quite a few low-hanging, low-tech that just cumbersome and all this other robot that people overlook. Just like if you look at the drug company, I always like drug company because they're the dinosaur. And they used to be the number one drug in this world ever produced, so called the drug called Lipitor. Lipitor was $14 billion a year for 10, 17 years, and that's the biggest drug ever made. And that's the glory days of a drug company. Ever since it become more now developed to the orphan drug, 10,000 patients. I think the robotic would probably come to this arena pretty soon because all the big market already saturated. Delivery robot, warehouse robot, and all this. I think there's an interesting opportunity in this kind of orphan application. And I think those are actually looks easy, but actually very difficult because that's one reason people don't do it.
You mentioned warehouse robots, so maybe hand off to Mode. Like,
Yeah.
I know you guys. We were working early on like some really fascinating simulation approaches and how to scale swarms. I'm curious, kind of what you're seeing on the next edge of
Yeah.
robotics.
So I think there are different industries like manufacturing, retail, supply chain, like warehouse robotics. From what we see, the penetration of automation is typically between 10 to 20%. So if you're looking at global facilities where sophisticated robotics and automation is deployed, that's only about 20%. In developing countries, this will be much lower. And the number of facilities are growing as well because companies are delivering orders to tier two, tier three towns. And they want the same day or next day deliveries, or some cases now, even in India, we have a huge number of wave for huge wave for 10-minute deliveries as well for groceries. So things are booming like in terms of online shopping, e-commerce. So there is a huge room to actually tap this whole supply chain market for us, and not just in the process which we automate, but also for the other processes which we have not even build any prototype. So there is a huge room to grow within the same industry, and also look at adjacent or kind of similar industries like manufacturing, pharmaceuticals. There are companies which are kind of coming back to us with some requirements which are kind of similar to, let's say, e-commerce companies. Like they want to sort, let's say, medicines for their medical stores or chemistry stores. So yeah, there are some similar use cases which we are kind of identifying, and we will also want to tap into those opportunities other than the logistics or retail supply
Yep,
chains.
great. And then, well, I know maybe we go to Kate next, who's uh, in Asia amongst many robotics companies that are coming to life very quickly. So, Kate, I'm curious, maybe what you're seeing in your environment, kind of where are other robotics companies coming to life, where are there really interesting technologies happening around you?
Right. I think there are actually the opportunities everywhere because it's quite clear that robots are very good at working in extreme environments, like underwater, like in extreme cold, hot, or toxic environment, and that's where we're not suitable for human, and that's the room for the robots. And apart from that, I think quick data processing and good at repetitive work and all sorts of the tougher tasks, repetitive tasks, or tasks we require quite quick data processing would be suitable for the robots. So there are a lot of rooms.
I agree. Maybe Faizan, do you want to round us all out here? You're on mute.
Okay. Sorry, the question is, where do I see the opportunity for
Yeah,
next wave of
like
robots?
or technology markets. You tell me, kind of where would you put robotics in the future?
Yeah, I'm personally excited about food automation, food preparation automation, as well as personal care robotics. So, if I would be very interested to know about hair cutting robots. So replacing the barber with robot. Also replacing the chef or parts of the food preparation for with robot. And the last one would be custom clothing. So can we replace like a tailor uh, to make custom clothes with robot? That's a hard task as well.
I could probably pitch you on all the other HAX portfolio companies you sit alongside that solve those problems, whether it's
Oh, cool.
Unspun or Extra. I can go on forever, but it's solving a lot of those fantastic problems. So with that, we actually just out of time. So appreciate everybody. I think there's some fascinating insight around early stage focus on customers, finding the right investors, getting into a culture shift between early stage product development and then scale and testing, and ultimately a future where we have more robots starting to take on some of the tasks that humans shouldn't be doing, but also working alongside in all the awesome arenas that you guys are playing, but also a few that don't exist yet as well. So with that, I want to thank everybody for your time, your insight. Feel free to we'll repost this and get excited. And everybody who's on the call, feel free to reach out to us at HAX as well as follow and see what's happening with the companies that are on the call here today. So with that, I'll close out the session. Thanks again, and we'll see everybody in the breakout sessions and the rest of the event.